If you are a fan of the strange, dark, and mysterious, delivered in story format, then you have come to the right place. Because that is all we do here. We upload new stories every single week. So, if that is of interest to you, please offer to help the like button shovel the snow out of their driveway, but then deliberately pile all that snow right back in front of their garage door, so they are trapped inside for the rest of the winter. Also, please subscribe and turn on all notifications so you do not miss any of our weekly uploads. Now, before we get into today's story, I want you to just take a second. Sit back. Really lean back into your chair. Let the weight of the world leave your shoulders. Grab yourself a fresh cup of coffee, good black, make it strong, or maybe a handful of peanuts, because we are going to be here for a very long time. Today, we are not just looking at a crime scene. We are looking at a house that could breathe. A house that watched. A house that invited a monster in for dinner and let him stay for dessert. Are you ready? Good. Let's get into it. Imagine, it is March of 1922. You are in the heart of Bavaria, Germany. The air is so cold, it feels like it is trying to shatter your teeth. You live on a farm called Hinterkaifeck. It is a lonely, triangular piece of and surrounded by dark and thick woods. The nearest neighbor is almost a kilometer away. Out here, silence is not just a lack of noise, it is a physical presence. You are Andreas Gruber, the owner of this farm. You are a hard man. A man of routine. You do not believe in ghosts, and you certainly do not believe in fear. But one morning, as you step out onto your porch to start our chores, you see something that stops your heart. Mid-beat. In the fresh, white blanket of snow that fell overnight, there are tracks. Human footprints. They start at the edge of the dark forest. They move with purpose, step by step, sinking deep into the powder, heading straight toward your machine shed. You follow them, your breath hitching in the frozen air. You check the shed, the door is slightly ajar. You check the barn. You check the house. And then, you realize that the logic of the situation has just broken. You look back at the woods. You look at the tracks leading to your door. And you realize there are no return tracks. Someone, or something, walked from the forest into your home. And according to the snow, they never left. You do not tell your wife. You do not tell your daughter. You tell yourself it is just a prank. Maybe a traveler. But that night, as the sun dips below the horizon and the house grows dark, you hear it. Above your head. In the attic. Creak. 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 It is not the wind. It is not the wood settling. It is the sound of rhythmic, human footsteps, pacing back and forth, direct, above where you sleep. You grab your lantern, you grab your heavy tool, and you climb the stairs. You swing the attic door open, expecting to find a burglar or a drifter. But the attic is empty. There is nothing but dust and old crates. Yet, as you turn to leave, you notice a newspaper on the floor. A newspaper from the city. A city you have not visited in months. A newspaper that was not there yesterday. You look at the lock on the door. It has been tampered with. Someone has been watching you. Someone has been living in the spaces between your walls, listening to our conversations, smelling your food, and waiting. Waiting for the exact moment when the standard life of the Gruber family would come to a violent, screaming end. But here is where the logic truly begins to defy us. Because Andreas Gruber did not call the police. He did not take his family and run to the neighbors. He stayed. He went back to bed. He chose to live in a house with an invisible guest. And that decision was the last mistake he would ever make. Now, for the next few days, from March 31st to April 1st, the world outside Hinterkaifeck began to notice a strange, heavy silence coming from the farm. It was like the entire property had been placed under a glass jar. The mail began to pile up in the small wooden box at the edge of T.H.E. Road. The local school noticed that 7-year-old Kazilia did not show up for class. Neighbors looked toward the farmhouse, and they saw smoke rising from the chimney, but they did not see a single soul moving in the yard. No one was hauling water. No one was tending to the horses. But inside that house, things were far from silent. I want you to put yourself in the shoes of Victoria, the daughter. You are a widow, a mother, trying to keep your family together in this isolated fortress of wood and stone. You have felt the eyes on the back of your neck for days. You have seen the terrified look in your father's eyes, the man who was never afraid. It is the evening of Friday, March 31st. The sun has just collapsed behind the tree line, leaving the arm in a bruising shade of purple and black. Suddenly, you hear a noise. It is coming from the barn. It is not the usual sound of restless livestock. It is a rhythmic thud. A sound of summit being moved. You look at your mother, you look at your father. There is no more ignoring the guest in the attic. The intruder is not hiding in the shadows anymore. He is calling you. One by one, the family begins to walk toward the barn. Think about the logic here. Why wouldn't they go together? Why wouldn't they take a lantern and a gun? Out here, in the year 1922. You are alone. Fear does strange things to the human brain. It makes you move in a trance. Your father goes first. He walks across the cold, muddy yard. The heavy barn door creaks as he swings it open. He steps into the darkness. He doesn't even have time to scream. Standing in the shadows, perfectly silent, perfectly prepared, is a figure holding a pickaxe. With one swift, overhead arc, the heavy iron blade finds its mark. Your father collapses into the hay. And the killer? He doesn't run. He doesn't panic. He simply drags the body into a corner, and he waits. Because he can. Ows, the rest of you are coming. Your mother is next. She calls out for her husband. She steps into the same dark barn, her eyes searching the shadows. She sees a movement. She thinks it is Andreas. But before she can speak, the pickaxe swings again. Then, it is your turn. Victoria. You walk into that barn, with your young daughter, little Kazilia, clutching your skirt. You walk into a slaughterhouse that smells of iron and old wood. You see the shapes in the corner. You see the glint of the metal. You die in the same spot as your parents. And your daughter. The person who did this did not show mercy to a 7-year-old. She was struck down right there, next to the people who were supposed to protect her. But, here is where the story moves from a tragedy to something deeply mysterious. The killer has now murdered 4 people in the barn. But there are still 2 people left in the house. The new maid, Maria, who had just arrived that very afternoon, and your youngest son, 2-year-old Joseph, who is sleeping peacefully in his crib. The killer leaves the barn. He walks back across the yard. His boots clicking on the frozen ground. He enters the kitchen. He walks past the warm stove. He heads straight for the maid's room. Maria never even got to unpack her bags. She was killed in her bed. A stranger, in a house of death. And then, the killer walks into the nursery. He looks down at 2-year-old Joseph. In a standard murder mystery, this is where the killer flees. He is finished with his grues. Own work. He should be miles away, before the sun comes up. But the person at Hinterkaifeck, he was not finished. He did not want to leave. Because, for the next 3 days, the lights at Hinterkaifeck would stay on. The chimney would continue to smoke. The cows would be fed. The bread would be eaten. The killer was no longer an intruder. He was the new master of the H.U.'s. Now, I want you to really think about the logic of a crime. Usually, a killer wants two things. They want silence, and they want distance. They want to be as far away from the bodies as humanly possible before the sun rises. But the person at Hinterkaifeck? He was different. For the next 72 hours, while the bodies of the Gruber family lay cold and stiff in the barn, the farmhouse remained alive. Imagine you are a neighbor passing by on a Saturday morning. You look toward the farm. You see smoke curling lazily from the chimney. You think to yourself, oh, the Grubers are just having a quiet weekend. But inside, a monster was making himself at home. The killer did not just leave. He stayed. He walked into the kitchen past the bloodstains and he felt hungry. He sat at the family's table. He ate their bread. He drank their milk. He used their stove to cook himself a warm meal, while the people who own that food air rotting just a few meters away. This is the part that defies everything we know about human psychology. The killer even tended to the farm. He went out to the barn, stepping over the dies of Andreas, Kazilia, and Victoria, and he fed the cattle. He gave them water. He made sure the horses were cared for. Why? Was he trying to pretend everything was normal? Or did he truly believe that he now owned this place? Think about the sheer, cold-blooded arrogance of it. On Sunday night, a neighbor saw a light moving in the yard. Someone was carrying a lantern. The boy assumed it was Andreas checking on the animals. But it was not Andreas. It was the man who had split Andreas's skull open only 48 hours prior. The killer was living a LLEL life. He slept in their beds. He listened to the wind howling against the walls. He sat in the darkness, surrounded by the ghosts of the people he had just slaughtered. And for 3 whole days, no one knew. But, on Tuesday, April 4th, the silence finally became too loud. A repairman named Michael Pohl arrived at the farm to fix a broken engine. He knocked on the door. No answer. He shouted. No answer. He spent hours working in the yard right outside the barn. He noticed the dog, the family's loyal guard dog, was tied up, barking frantically, looking thin and terrified. Michael finished his work and left, but he felt a chill in his spine. Something was wrong. Finally, the neighbors had seen enough. They gathered a group of men and walked toward the farmhouse. They pushed open the barn door, and the world changed forever. They found them stacked like cordwood, covered in hay. And as the men stumbled back in horror, they noticed something that made their skin crawl. The kitchen was still warm. The table was set. The killer had escaped only minutes before they arrived. He had not been running for 3 days. He had been waiting. And as the police began to investigate, they realized the most terrifying truth of all. The killer did not need to break in. He did not need to force a window. Because, according to the evidence, the monster had been living in that house long before the first drop of blood was ever spilled. The investigation into the Hinterkaifeck murders became one of the most frustrating and bizarre cases in history. The police questioned over 100 suspects. They looked at neighbors, they looked at drifters, they even looked at Victor I's husband, who was reported dead in World War I. Some people believed he had survived and came back to take revenge on the family that had moved on without him. But no one was ever charged. One of the main suspects was a neighbor named Lorenz Schlittnber. He was the one who led the search party. He was the one who pushed open the barn door. And, according to witnesses, he was the one who moved the bodies before the police arrived. Was he trying to help? Or was he trying to hide evidence? Schlittnber had a complicated history with Victoria. They had a child together, but Andreas, the father, did not approve. The logic says he had a motive. But there was never enough proof to lock him away. In the end, the police did so, meeting. Truly desperate. They sent the skulls of the Gruber family to Clairvoyantius in the city. They hoped that psychics could talk to the dead and find the name of the killer. But the dead remained silent. The farmhouse at Hinterkaifeck was torn down a year later. The neighbors could not stand to look at it anymore. They wanted to bury the memory of the monster in the attic. But, as the wooden beams were ripped apart and the walls were smashed, they found something that chilled them to the bone. In the insulation of the attic, the wife found hidden spaces. They found hollowed-out sections where a man could sight and watch the family below through the cracks in the ceiling. They found evidence that the guest had been there for weeks, maybe months. So, here is the question I want to leave you with. Tonight, when you turn off your lights and you hear a small creak in your ceiling, or when you find a window that you could have sworn you locked, but it is now slightly ajar, do not just assume it is the wind. Do not assume your mind is playing tricks on you. Because sometimes the logic is wrong. Sometimes the shadows are not empty. And sometimes the guest in your attic is just waiting for you to fall asleep.